Bearing with us. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here today at the first inaugural Arts Forward Summit of 2025. And we are very excited to kick things off for the Evolving Perspective Arts and Innovation track, which is going to center around the dynamic and intersection of technology, tradition, and the ever-changing landscape of the arts today. Today's panel is a very interesting and controversial topic that we're all hearing about constantly in the news. It's going to be about artificial intelligence and the arts. And we're going to hear from these two incredible individuals who are asking the question, is AI a tool that pushes artistic growth, or is it a potential threat to human creativity? I'm Brianna Wasinski, and I'll be your moderator today. As a digital marketer and graphic designer, AI has radically shook up my very own industry. So I'm personally very excited to hear about this debate and look at how we explore and draw the line between innovation, authenticity, and the world of humanity and creativity. So first, let me introduce our panelists. Joining us today is Dennis Casilla and DJ Perera. Dennis is an architect and the founder of CH Studio, an assistant professor of architecture, as well as the director of architecture graduate programs at UT Arlington. DJ is an artist, entrepreneur, and educator, and he brings a unique perspective on blending traditional and new media art through programming that connects young artists to new techniques and new technologies. He was recently nominated for the 40 Under 40 and was selected as UNT Health Science Center's Favorite Innovators in 2023. And as we've stated, you guys can scan the QR code on the back of your badges and read the full bios for all of our panelists today, so you can be sure to check out more details on their phenomenal work in the community. So, as I said, today's panel, DJ and Dennis, are going to give us insights into the evolving role of artificial intelligence in the arts. With AI rapidly reshaping how we create and experience art, we're asking the question, is innovation enhancing our creative expression, or is it a threat to the authenticity of humanity's artistry? I cannot wait to hear what each of our panelists have to say, so let's go ahead and take it away, DJ.
Is this on? Hello? Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Okay. Take this off. Okay. Firstly, Brianna, thank you for that lovely introduction. Dennis, it's an absolute pleasure. And Arts Fort Worth, thank you for what will be the first of many. And this will definitely put a spotlight on Fort Worth's art ecosystem. Okay, I want to start off by saying that whether you like it or not, educators, politicians may disagree, but we have to realize that we are living in a post-literate society. And if we do not accept that, then we are just living in a bubble of naivety. And to evidence that statement is a plethora of educational data that tracks how this country performs on a global scale. When I graduated from Pratt Institute in 2012, I ended up working for the United Nations. And one of the subsidiary branches of the UN is the OECD, the Office for Economic Cooperation and Development. And they have a program called PISA, Program for International Student Assessment. If you're a member of the OECD as a state nation, you are encouraged to partake in this assessment. And the assessment measures 15-year-olds and how they can perform, basically secondary school students, and how they can perform in mathematics, science, and reading. So, what you see here is PISA reading scores. The green marks indicate America's placement. The gray indicates Canada's, and the blue symbolizes every other smaller nation. I will say this, that I included Canada not because these two countries share an affinity for the number 51, but because they share similar profiles from a societal perspective, linguistically, pluralistically, education-wise, And so when you look at these, the question has to be asked is, why is our G7 neighbor constantly outperforming us? The PISA tests are conducted every 3 years, so that's what you're seeing here in 3-year increments. Science, it's the same narrative. Mathematics, it's the same narrative. But what I want to point out is you do see an uptick since 2015. We'll go back. We'll go back. And the reason for that is that in December of 2015, President Obama signed the ESA Act, which is Every Student Success Act. And in that particular act, there was a provision that was made to fund STEAM practices into the curriculum. And so you do see a trend of growth within America. But however, same cannot be said for mathematics. Now, the question that could be conjectured from this is there room for creativity in something as formative as mathematics? Maybe my colleague can answer that with more expertise. But that led me to think, okay, how can we, as an educator, how can I expand on STEAM concepts? And I'm not so much interested in bringing STEAM into the curriculum as much as I am bringing STEAM and focusing on the arts as a whole. So what I devised back 3 years ago was the NAMNAL project, the New Age Media, New Age Learning project. And this was done with a grant through the Education Foundation of Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD. And I'm proud to say that TCU had no hesitations in piloting this program with me. The gist of NAMNAL is to take the highest performing secondary school students that have a passion for the arts and thrust them into a world of collegiate rigor that deals with new media technologies. And not only was Dean Tully receptive to this idea, as well as Director Richard Lane, but what is critical about this program is Professor Bontrager, Nick Bontrager, who heads the new media program there. So what you see here is students being thrust into a new learning environment. They're receiving a new level of instruction in a different learning environment that requires interacting with a person besides myself. I am taken out of the equation. They learn from these new media practices. They get to not just experience them, but they have to create a prototype. And these prototypes are then repurposed and regenerated into their portfolio works. So this isn't your cliche, let's go take a campus tour and visit a few buildings and admire the roses and the flowers and the garden landscapes. This is getting nitty-gritty, working with other professional artists that are teaching, that can truly call themselves educators, and bridging that gap between new media practices and traditional practices. And what they do with these repurposed artworks is implement them into their AP portfolios, submit it to district competitions. And as you can see, the talent in Fort Worth is there. We know that. We just need to make sure that we groom and cultivate that mindset into the young ones, that getting access to this type of research and those type of professionals is not out of the ordinary. Okay, so that was the first year with TCU. My mindset thinks, okay, how can I take this forward into the second year? Wrote another grant and expanded it to include UTD as the second collegiate program. So not only is TCU partnering with me for the second year, but the first year sees UTD in the mix. I've got a different cohort of students, and now they are in a completely different environment with a new level of instructor and instruction. And what we found out through the UTD experience was something more experiential. Because that institute is a research institute, we needed licensed technicians to help the students create 15 different prototypes. This was something that we did not foresee. It wasn't possible to get those technicians to assist the students, unlike TCU, where it was quite smaller in terms of student-teacher ratio. Technology was a lot more manageable, but with UTD, it wasn't as successful as I envisioned it. So the students got to see a lot of the high-end tech that is utilized in their new media program, from sound engineering to graphic design. But what I'm about to show you is something that I take immense pride in because we got to experience their anechoic chamber. And if any of you stepped into an anechoic chamber, it is an unsettling experience. You stay there long enough, you can go cuckoo, just like some of our politicians. You stay there long enough, you can hear your heartbeat. You can stay there longer, you can start hearing the blood vessels in your ears. And I believe the Guinness Book of World Record for the longest stay time is only 45 minutes. So, I didn't want them to just receive a lecture in this anechoic chamber. I got them to step out of the room and one by one come in. And I had a student photographer with me. And what I prompted them, because I was adamant that they leave the campus with something tangible, prompted them to use silence as a muse and told them to switch on their torch, what we call a torch, you call a flashlight, told them to switch on the flashlight on their phones and let the silence take over and start gesturing. And they created these exquisite light paintings. But what you're seeing here, ladies and gentlemen, is not just cliche light painting images. You're seeing images that speak volumes in terms of anthropological and psychological components. You see two different gestures that are made here. What if I told you that the student on the right is from South Asia, like myself? What if I told you that she's a Sikh? What if I told you that in Sikhism, reincarnation and concentric forms is a pretty normal design component in South Asian art? What if I told you that in South Asia, this rigid, formal upbringing possibly influenced that design? Student on the left is an American student, okay? Agnostic, but spontaneous, adventurous, decisive, right? Is not curbed by boundaries. And when you look at these images as an educator, all I can do is just salivate, because it is so rich when they're not given prompts, they're not politicized or socialized, right? It is pure light painting created within the context of an anechoic chamber. And I wish I could have shown more images, but there's a lot to absorb when you look at material like that. So what do we do with the third year? The third year was quite decisive, in which I knew that I wanted the students to grapple with AI, and that was something that Professor Dr. Roger Molina from UTD and his assistant Evan Acuna were more than receptive to, and definitely Professor Nick Bontrager. However, what you're seeing here in this particular slide, and what I want to bring to your attention, is no more is the foundation funding this third year. It is actually a school district, the Eagle Mountain Saginaw district. Now the narrative changes. If you get a school board, a school ISD involved, what are the possibilities? Foundations operate short-term. Districts have the capacity to operate long-term. And not only that, Arts Fort Worth, just like me, salivating at the idea of having an exhibition component to this. So my idea is not only to introduce AI, but to also finally give these students not just the authentic working experience, but an authentic resume building experience, to say that they can actually showcase in a professional commercial art gallery. And that's where Arts Fort Worth, well, they do. That's the role that they're playing in for the third year. So we started off with a visit to UTD, and this is their graphic design animation program. And what you're seeing here are students utilizing a mouse and a stylus to create a 60-second sketch. And what you're seeing here, and this is what's going to be most compelling, is that in the middle is the 60-second sketch. The 4 iterations is AI generated in 5 seconds. Completely idealized, completely romanticized, and to a certain degree, it is a disconnect between what the students created and what AI perceives it to be. I actually got really annoyed with this student. I actually scolded Fernando here, asking him, how in the world did you only create this in 60 seconds? And mind you, he's an AP student. So this garbage here that he created ended up being a Renaissance piece, according to AI. You can see how immensely idealized AI took that image and generated it in 5 seconds. I want you to keep your eyes on this image, and that image. That's an artist, but I did not berate him as much, because when you go back to these two images, what intrigues me is how these androgynous sketches leave nothing to the imagination, and yet AI took it upon itself to interpret these images as highly feminine. There are no hallmarks for breasts, for curvaceous lips and whatnot. There are no indications for cosmetic upgrades. And yet we see what AI presented. The last image is arguably androgynous, and I wish I had documented the error message, but AI actually broke. And I had to commend this student. Yes, we can clap for that. AI has limitations. But the error message did pop up that we cannot computate this piece of data. And so what you have here is AI just replicating it instead of redefining it. And that just melted my heart, okay, in terms as an educator, as a practitioner. And what was even most appealing to me was the fact that the students had to grapple with this existential crisis here. Okay, they hear about it, but they just don't understand it. And the fact is, can they actually claim those artworks as theirs? Ownership becomes an issue now. Are you going to be proud to say that AI is not a collaborator in this instance? Is it just strictly a tool? Or are you going to concede the fact that it is a collaborator, even though it is not a physical breathing entity? The second year with TCU looked at AI and us. So UTD, you can perceive it as AI versus me. This is AI versus us. And what Professor Bontrager had the students do was create an image, basically generate an image through AI. And he had every student stand up and move along to the next station. And now you have 15 different superimpositions, right? And this is what he likes to term as visual mess, aesthetic mess, because now it's not coherent, it doesn't follow a particular style or a particular vision, but it just becomes something more whimsical, an exercise of fun. But once the original student that had the original ideation returned back to their station, they were grappled with the idea of, okay, again, is this my artwork, or is it my colleague's artwork, or is this AI's artwork? Because in this instance, all they were doing was typing a prompt, and AI would generate these images at the whims of the student. And so we had to present the question to them, and they, I'm proud to say, but begrudgingly so, that yes, we do have to acknowledge that AI was a collaborator, not a tool. And you should have seen the expression on their faces, that realization, because there's a certain pride that comes with, teenagers and adolescents. But the fact that they were confronted with those feelings at an early age makes them truly prepared for what is about to come their way in the future. Okay? They're going to have to live and compete with this technology. And once we grapple with AGI, there are going to be a lot more existential questions that they're going to have to face, which I'll address in the end. So all this to say that 3 years' worth of hard work are going to culminate in a show that will commence on the 12th of April. And as you heard Wesley attest to the tragicness of losing such a glorious space, I want to thank Megan Henson and the Near Southside Incorporated for opening up the Pool Gallery, which will be the new host site for the NAMNAL exhibition. And as you can see here, all the partners that have partaken in this endeavor are going to be recognized. It is going to take place on the 12th of April, and the opening reception will begin from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And I'm also proud to say that not only will this offer the students that gallery exhibitionary exposure, but they will also get to speak in a panel discussion which will be moderated by Lauren Sabah. And what was a curse in the beginning, where I lost the gallery space and then were presented with two options between Fort Works Art and the pool, I still managed to retain the services and expertise of Lauren Sabah, who will be asking questions of 4 of the students that participated, as well as the former Deputy Superintendent of EMS ISD, and Evan Acuna of UTD. So, I'm super proud. It's been quite an adventurous journey, and I want you to understand this, that those 16 students were not just grappling with these philosophical questions for themselves, but think of them as more of a metaphor for us. Will 45 be the new 65 when it comes to retirement? How will AI replace human efficiency? Forget AI, AGI. How will art museums curate and value artworks? Are they going to place more emphasis, more value on artworks that can be created in 1 to 2 days, maybe 1 to 2 hours? Or are they going to value a body of work that took 1 to 2 years to create through human endeavor? And that was a question that I posited to the curator of the Modern Art Museum during a panel discussion that was hosted by the Tarrant County Black Historical Society, and that was moderated by Dr. John Barnett. And finally, how does this compete with our need for literacy? Should we still have a value for literacy? Do the students need to be literate? Because when you look at AI, it becomes all universal now. And what does that say for cultural sensitivities, linguistic sensitivities, if you're having a universal language? And more importantly, forget language, but visual language. How is that going to impact the way we produce art, create art, promote art, and value art? It won't be about propping up underrepresented or minority artists. It's going to be more about humankind, right? How are we going to value AI generative technologies and aesthetics, or are we going to preserve, for the sake of humankind, human intelligence? And that's something that perhaps, Dennis can touch upon. Thank you.
I'm going to try to be fast, so I think we're going to get kicked out of the room shortly. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for being here. This is exciting. I'm a little bit skeptical about the whole AI thing, or I have been for a while. And I think about what some of these behavioral economists have said about AI, that they were more concerned about natural stupidity than artificial intelligence. And I've always been like, we need to think about people and how we're actually dealing with these things. I'm going to take a look at this from the design architecture, which has components of art. I'm not an artist, but There are elements of our practice, our discipline as architects that incorporates visual, especially visual communication, which I think is what's influencing the future of the profession, and it has always been, but I think it's creating some problems in how we educate students and future architects. I didn't know how to do this, so I thought, okay, what do I say about this? Because I've tried to stay away from AI for a while. So then, for the first time, I went to ChatGPT, and I asked, let's see, can you create an outline for an AI presentation delivered by an architect? And then it gave me this whole thing, right? And I thought, awesome. This is one of the benefits of this thing. It can actually speed things up quite a bit. And I was like, oh, okay, and then it's actually quite reasonable. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Total sense. Yes, benefits, challenges. And then I said, it has to be a 15-minute presentation. I should have said 8 minutes because now we're running out of time. And then it gave me another, 2 minutes here. It cut out some things. I thought, perfect. This actually helps. And so as I'm going to just show you a bunch of images, I have a fairly traditional small practice where, I meet with people, clients, people that want to design a home. And then we talk. My wife, who is my partner, is always with me. And then we get to know the people that we're working with and the client. And then we make drawings and models. And we present to them. They like some of that stuff. Some of it they hate. And then we end up building or designing things that hopefully get built. We call it a 24-foot cube, which we really thought of as an accessory dwelling unit that could be kind of in the backyard of any house, any single-family lot. But all of this is, it takes years of my research and me thinking about housing and the housing crisis and then knowing these people, years, right? And then eventually we end up with something like this. And the opportunity may be that AI can condense that into a few minutes, but without the human component, which is the part that enriches my life as a designer, as an architect. And so, what does this mean for us as we start to educate, as we are educating future architects? So this is the work from some of my colleagues and some of our students at UT Arlington. This is Dr. Mehdi Farabaksh, his expertise is on technology and computational design and fabrication. And so with his students, they're growing things, they're growing materials, and then looking at how do you take that from as an experiment and then bring it into the computer, to the AI machine, and then start to generate images that then are taken out of the computer and then begin to produce physical models. So it's interesting because for a long time it was, we talk, we have an idea, we draw, then we make a model, then we present it, then there's feedback, then there's iterations. But now all these images can be created in seconds. So the danger to me feels like there can be a false sense of accomplishment because it would take me a long time to do these types of renderings in the traditional sense. And students can just produce those very quickly. But they don't have the technical ability to actually make those things a reality, right? To make a building of it. So we're seeing just examples of this sort of back and forth between the analog, the digital, and then also the AI, generated imagery. And so here we're seeing, Mehdi, my colleague said, hey, they had a review this week. I said, hey, can you send me a video of what the process of these things? And he goes, yeah, actually, the students are gonna work on that. And so this is a sped up version, but it's really fast. The way that they can start to create imagery that is it's not necessarily sophisticated. I mean, if they were presenting this side, the left side of the screen to the faculty, to us as critics, we would say, well, this is clumsy, it's rough, it needs more love, it needs more time for you to develop these. But then immediately you can see the difference between the clumsiness of that and then the sophisticated imagery that's produced on the right side. This is immediate, right? And so then students are like, we've done all of this. And we say, well, yeah, but have you, are you doing it? Is it being co-authored? Are you using AI as a tool? Or does AI have more agency than we think? This is another student. So this is their workflow. They input information. They say, assign pavilion, modular seating, and da-da-da-da, and then boom. I mean, that's fast. These things are being implemented in practice as well. And so then, for those of you that hire architects, you wonder, well, I'm paying you or I'm paying the AI machine to do these things? Because it seems pretty quick. Let's see how much time I got. Yeah, I need to hurry up. So then this week, I was at Texas A&M at a Texas Society of Architects board meeting, and we get to see their school. There's like 35 board members from the AIA Texas. It's like the state chapter of the American Institute of Architects. And so they're showing us some of the cutting edge research that their PhD students are doing. And so this is one of them, and they have this chatbot that basically analyzes models, digital models that are input into the thing. And so he's given us a demo of it, and then one of the things, so they brought a model, and then somebody said, ask a question. And so one of my colleagues said, hey, how much insulation do you need for that roof? And then the machine took 26 seconds. Somebody counted, and we were recording it. And then it spit out a long, paragraphs of information. And then we scroll down, and then it gets to here, performance recommendation, consult an architect. So we were like, yes. It all comes back to the two people. So we were all of us were happy to hear it. Yes, because there are limitations. Today, there are still limitations. And I'll end with this. So this is a project that I've worked on almost 10 years ago, 9 years ago. And I don't know if AI today has the ability to reduce things to its essence, to a simple sketch, which again, this is the art part of architecture, where I can draw 3 lines on a paper and I can imagine and I can think of all the ideas that are embedded in this sketch about how a building sits on the landscape, on a large landscape, the connection to the sky, the way that we place it on the paper. AI seems to just accumulate information. It's biased, as DJ was showing us earlier, but it doesn't think of it in the terms that maybe a human, or it doesn't, I don't know if it thinks yet. And so this is what I call Barnhouse, which was designed for this place in Terrell, Texas, about an hour and a half from here. And it was for some friends, very modest. We built it for $130,000. And you see our children were very young then. And that's what it looked, that's me looking at the house and the horse looking at me, I think. And so the connection of the human, the family that we got to know over a 2-year process to develop a home, that then you can see the context of this stuff, right? That the humanity of designing something very modest in a landscape of trailer homes, can AI, does it have that connection? Can it do that for an environment or for the people that are here, or is this something that we just feed up through to produce imagery that is sort of compelling, visually compelling, because that's how we navigate the world, but it doesn't have any human connection? And to me, that's maybe where I sort of step back and say, well, let's really think about this. Because I should stop there. Yeah, thank you. Because we're running out of time. All right. We can continue later. Yeah. Okay.
Do we have time to take questions? 2 minutes. Okay. Who has a really fabulous question that we can end on from the audience?
What are some ways that you could suggest ethical use of AI in
So I will say this I'll say this. John? It ultimately comes down to the UN as a world governing body. If those people have not come up with some type of regulation, then it doesn't matter how many state nations do so. We're going to be grappling with this perpetually, especially with how rapid AI is progressing. There's a man in Arizona that has successfully lived with a neurochip implanted in his brain, right? Man is paralyzed, but he can control thought through Elon Musk's Neuralink. Who has control of that technology? Is it the beneficiary or is it the manufacturer? this is something that society is going to have to quickly address before Neuralink becomes commercial. And the only body that should have a final neutral say is the UN.
Yeah, I perhaps I think the maybe more danger or the thing we need to be cautious about is the way we understand this as a tool, and when AI becomes its own agent, or it's already kind of an agent for us. We can say, hey, do this, and then it does something. But when it starts to make decisions on its own, which they're already doing, they've tested, when you have to do the I'm not a robot thing, they've already tested AI to try to bypass that. And they're able to not themselves bypass or approve the thing, but they can manipulate a human being to then do it. And so when they have agency, and it's not going to be about like, what are we going to create? How do we manipulate it? How do we keep control of it? How do we prevent it from controlling us? I think the difference is AI as a tool and AI as an agent which we're in transition today. So.
No, I'm so sorry. But we kind of anticipated this, to be honest, because as we saw in the presentations today, AI is presenting questions that are going to continue to come up. And with this idea of forward movement, I encourage you all to continue this conversation after this panel, maybe have some conversations and ask some questions of each other or our esteemed panelists. Thank you very much, DJ and Dennis. Thank you all so much for being here.